Hi everybody, we're going to jump in here and go through how to do some basic edits to a pre-made vector illustration that I've grabbed off of iStockphoto.com. Opened up a new blank canvas and I'm going to go to File, Import, and grab the illustration EPS file of the illustration I'm going to work on and click Import. Import it as curves, okay. Then when you see this little corner shape show up, you're going to press the space bar and it will place it into your canvas space. You can zoom in a little closer and make sure that your view is set on enhanced so everything is nice and crisp and clear. And what we're going to do for this is we're going to, first of all, look over to our object manager, and right here we realize that there's just one group of objects. You don't see every layer exposed yet in your manager, so what we're going to do is right click it, ungroup, and then all of our layers are going to show up and be able to be clicked on and changed. So for this editing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the internet, and we are on designseeds.com, and I'm going to grab this color palette. Just right click, copy image, and what I do is I open my canvas and paste it into the sidebar area of the image that I'm working on. And say my client wants this to be a purple and green color palette instead of a pink color palette. So that is going to be the goal for this time, and maybe we'll go in and change some hair color while we're at it. So changing colors on pre-made illustrations is pretty easy. All you need to do is select the layer that you want to change, go over to the paint bucket tool, and you can either choose your color that you want to change it to from the models panel or the palettes panel. But in this case, what I'm doing is working from the specific color palette that we chose for the design project. So I'm going to come over here, hover my cursor over the purple that I'm switching to, and we're going to stick with a light purple. And I will click that. It's going to bring it over here into the new color preview box. Click OK, and then it's changed. The next shape, which has been grouped together with the weld tool, is going to be that darker version of the purple. So we'll go over here, click it, double click it, drag your cursor, choose the darker, press enter, and there we go. We can also do the shirt, maybe do the shirt this blue. Or this blue. Okay. Now if we zoom in here, we can see that there's a slight outline on the outside of the shirt that you may not want in this case. It's the skin outline of the shoulders. What you could do is double click on it. Click on one of your node points and use your arrow key as long as you are set on 1 for your nudge distance. Let's go do that now. And I can see that that outline is actually on top of the shirt. So what we're going to have to do in this case is drag it below that layer and then move it. This is one of those picky details that you may or may not worry about, but Okay. All right, so that looks a little bit more realistic. Skin tone is one of the more difficult things to get used to. When I was first starting out, I would often find it helpful to go to iStockphoto.com and pull up some illustration characters, and I would actually, let's give you an example. I would find a character that had similar skin tone that I was looking for, and let's take this one. This one's kind of tan. Click on her. It will bring you to the page, and then copy image. And we're only using this to draw color from. We're not using it to recreate or to use it for any projects. But I used to bring this as like a sample palette, stick it on the sidebar, and then from this you can use the same way as if you're using your color palette from Design Seeds to change the skin tone and the hair, or give you a variation that's closer than what you're currently working with. So if we're looking to make her more tan, we see that we have a fountain fill over here. This particular artist uses a lot of fountain fills. If you wanted to just give it a regular fill that didn't have a gradient in it, you could do so. It's a little bit easier to start that way and then work into fountains. But this is a pretty minimal fountain fill. So let's see if we can work with this. And we're going to choose the darker color first. Grab a color from her face, and it looks to be the same shade, so we'll go to Other and just pick a little bit lighter of a version. Okay. And there's other portions of this character where we're going to use the same gradient. So if we come over to the Color Eyedropper tool, there's the drop down there. You're going to choose the Attributes Eyedropper, click on that we just changed, and then click on the other portions of the character that will use the same gradient fill. Okay. In the case of the neck, I'm going to give it a little bit more of a contrast than the layers that were in front of it. So we're going to come over here to the darker and even give that a tiny bit of a darker still color. Okay, so there's kind of a slight definition between the back shapes and the front shapes. You'll also notice that you do need to come in and find your layers that give your shapes the outline. And in this case, you may need to zoom. And there we go, we can click. For these, I wouldn't worry about the fountains. I would just give it, since it's a line, a regular uniform fill. Select a skin tone around that color and then choose maybe right around here to give your outline color. Okay, and then stick to this color for every outline that you change. I could use the Attributes Eyedropper for this as well, but since it's a very thin shape, it might be just easier to click and do the paint bucket for each one. notice that this hand portion would make more sense to have a darker shade right here than the light. So we're going to click on the shape one more time. And we're going to make this lighter color darker instead. And it gives the hand a little bit of a shadow. And then we can copy this gradient right here under the chin. So we can grab our attributes. And there we go. Maybe even make it a little darker so it shows more. As a rule of thumb for the inner ear shapes, I usually always use the same shape that I'm outlining the character skin in if I'm using an outline. So that would be an easy color match. You could choose to start with this and then create a gradient fill to make it darker here and then blend with the outer ear. And you can also use the same darker gradient for eyelashes. Eyelids, excuse me. I'm going to copy the gradient fill under the chin and use that for under the lip and the nose. Grab the one from the hand and put that over here. Just kind of trying to mimic where the shadows lay and the highlights lay, as well as staying true to the color palette that we're using. So if you wander a bit from how the original character put their gradients in, that's fine. We just want to make it have an overall uniform polished look as if it still makes sense, like it would be something that the original artist would have created. Right now I've selected the hair shadow line. And usually I don't go as dark as the outline for the face. For this shape, I'll take something similar to this color or the color that's on the nose just to give it a slight shadow. And then for your cheeks, the little trick that I use is this is the Radial Fill shape that I create in my illustrations, and then we use the edge pad of 20. Right here he has an edge pad already set of 25. That's fine, I would stick with that. For the skin tone, we want to merge this color in with the new main color that we're using with the skin. But since we're using a darker color now, it looks like as if the pink is going to fade into that pretty well. So while we're in here, we're going to choose a new pink also. So we're going to pick the main tan, and then over to the pink, let's come and grab something from the lips. Okay, and that gave it a nice rose. We'll do the same thing. You don't want to grab the attributes tool for this, because what it will do is it will move the area or the direction of the radial fill shape to mimic this. So you would end up with the rose instead of over here. You'd have the rosy cheek radial shape over here. So it's just easier at this point for this one shape to just go over, double click the fountain fill, and then re-click the two colors that you just chose for the previous shape. Alright, I did notice while we were in there that he gave this an edge pad of 19, and that is why you will still see slightly a line there. We're going to go in and we're going to use our judgment and increase that slightly to see if that will make it blend a little better. There we go. Okay. And the closer you get with your eyedropper to the actual edge, the better, especially since we used a gradient on the face. So I'm going to move this down a bit. All right, much less of a line. If you did want to come in here and give it a transparency, you could do that by going to the blend tool drop down, transparency, and uniform, and that will give it a less of a saturation. Okay. For this example, we'll come in here and change the lip color to maybe a red. In this case, we want to look at how he built his lips. He gave her 3 layers for this lip. There was the bottom shadow, the bottom lip color, and then the top lip color, which looks like as if it's a radial fill. A lighter pink in the middle, darker pink on the outside. So for this main lip, we'll choose, this is a fountain fill, we'll choose a red that is just slightly lighter than the red we used in the bottom shadow. And then a red even lighter than our new red. Or a pink. Okay. And then for this, we can draw the attributes. Click this color that we want to bring over to this one, and give it the radial fill by coming over here, and we can double click it and change where this radial fill is showing up. There we go. All right. Let's come back over to our palette. We'll see that our client wanted us to work in this green color somewhere. We could put that in the eyes. So we'll come over, zoom over here, and see how our eyes are built before we start changing things. The pupils, you'll notice, it looks as if he used 3 shades of blue, 1 dark blue for the purple, a medium for the outline, and a fountain for the iris. So this green that we're going to incorporate is pretty light. We'll use that for the iris and then work from that for our darker hues. And for the middle of that, it's set to a light blue right now, so we're going to select the green and then change that to a light green or yellow. Okay. I will use the attributes for that. This is currently the outline that we're changing. I'm going to double click. Click on the green, and then in our models, we'll move our cursor down a bit to select a darker. And we want to make sure that that's exactly the same, so zooming in, double clicking, dragging over, going to click that new green. And the pupils, if you want to select two shapes at once, sometimes you can easily see that here are the two pupils, blue in the color manager. You can hold down the control key, click both of them, and then change them at the same time. And while we're in here, I'm noticing that the under eyelids should be a little darker also. So we're going to choose the upper eyelid color and just bring that down to the lower eyelid. And then I'm going to change the lower eyelashes to kind of a darker gray instead of the light. I'll select the black that he originally worked from and maybe grab this. And we can use our attributes again to save some time. Okay, while we're in here, we can look around and make sure that everything makes sense visually. Right now, I would say she's using kind of like a purpley black mascara. I would even go into this mascara brush and change that from the green to a color that would match the eyelashes. Maybe even turn it the black. And turn all the eyelashes black. This is where you play with things to make sure that your new image makes as much sense visually as the original, even if you are making the slight changes. Okay, so I've got the mascara one matching all the mascara. And from here, we can say we're all done, or we can go in and even work this a little further and change her hair color. Since I have this character up here, we might as well go in and change the hair color. We'll work on changing her to a dark brown. So what I do for changing hair is I always work from the back layer under the head to the front. Reason being, the darkest color that I use is always the one that I put behind the head where the shadow is. So this will give me my base color to work from, and then I can use that to create the lighter shades on top. So we're going to select that back color and basically pick a new color palette by applying this new gradient. So there's my dark brown, and I'm going to give her more of a chocolatey brown hue. Okay. So this is a pretty mute color palette that was in there originally. This one's going to give it a much richer look. So right off, you can see the layers that are going to have to mimic this dark layer in the back. So I'm going to grab the attributes and click on this layer and this one. And then all other layers are going to be worked from, and probably this one too, worked from this dark. So we can come in here, and when you click the fountain fill, you can use the next step up by, here's the darker layer in this gradient. You could choose a light section of the layer that we just did and then give it an even lighter color level. And if you find that you like that, copy it and work it into the next medium color layers that you have. And then it looks like we're just going to have one more layer here. Darkest one, I'm going to pick the lighter section of the last one that we did, and then choose a new lighter brown. Grabbing the attributes again, clicking on what we just did, adding it to this. Okay. You may want to play with that for a while, but for demonstrational purposes, that will work just fine. When you do color, hair color, you want to pay attention especially to the eyebrows before you move on to anything else. The eyebrows, I always choose the darkest hair color that we used within the character, and maybe especially for blonde, even a little darker. For this, that chocolate brown will work just fine. Okay. Just taking an extra look at everything overall, noticing that we need to make this mascara bottle the same as the mascara brush that we changed. So it's all black. And she is done. After this is all complete, you want to make sure you go to File and save it as a PDF file, and then also save it as a CorelDRAW file prior to closing. And also make sure that your color palettes are outside of your canvas borders before you save.